Let's get started. Thank you, folks, for being willing to spend part of your afternoon with us today.
So today we're going to be talking about a program that Lori and I have been working on called History's Mysteries, which I think you know because you signed up for the program, and hopefully you've had a chance maybe to check out our website ahead of time. But this really is a passion project for both of us, and we're very, very excited to share this with you today. My name is Kelly Brown, and I work for the East Hampton Public Schools. I'm actually a high school teacher, and I have been doing professional development for the last 15 years for K to 12 educators around social sciences and inquiry-based learning. And I'm very excited to be partnered with Lori Risler in creating this curriculum for K to 5 educators.
I'm Lori Risler. I teach in the education department at Westfield State University, but I am first and foremost a elementary classroom teacher. Kelly and I have had the privilege of working on professional development together for almost 10 years now. And this is truly a passion project that came out of our work with teachers like yourself. And we have been able to maintain that teacher focus, I think, as we've begun to work. So as an elementary educator and special educator, History's Mysteries is just an outgrowth of that work and experience.
And Lori and I are both teaching right now, so we get it. For those of you who are in the classroom, we 100% get it. This is really hard and challenging times, and so we're so excited that you could join us. And I'm very excited it's being recorded because I know that at this time of day, after teaching all day in this craziness, I'm pretty tired. So I'm imagining that some of you are feeling the same way. And so thanks for taking the time to be with us today. So our agenda for today is we're going to spend the first 15 minutes just giving you a little window into the project. We hope to give you an idea of where it came from, kind of how it connects to the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks, and also to introduce you to the website if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it. Then we're going to go through some samples, just kind of give you an idea of what's available and why we've chosen to put it that way. And then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what's next and hopefully reserve some time at the end for questions. It's a tight hour, but we're hoping to give you a window and also give you a chance to ask some questions. But please know that we are definitely available via email and are happy to answer your questions. There's some ways you can contact us through our site, and you all now have my email and Lori's email because I emailed you the updates about the meetings. So please feel free to reach out after the fact. So the origins of History's Mysteries is a cool story. I think it's where curriculum I think should come from. Lori and I both spent a lot of time over the last couple of years doing professional development for K to 12 educators with the new rollout of the 2018 social science framework. I was actually on the framework committee, and then I spent a lot of time working with Michelle Ryan, helping to roll out particularly the inquiry and practice standards. And as Lori and I were out there doing professional development in district after district, we were really facing elementary educators who were feeling not only overwhelmed by some of the changes that had been made, but also, I think, overwhelmed by this deep desire to do really good inquiry-based work, but feeling like they were being pulled in a million directions, having so many different things to teach, and that social studies was really getting squeezed out for everything else. And so you may all be nodding to that, thinking, yes, that's exactly what happens with social studies. And so Lori and I really were inspired to think about how do we create and help elementary teachers do the work that they want to do, but do it in a way that's like easy and accessible. That focuses on best practices like inquiry, that bring in primary support sources, that provide content support in places where educators might not necessarily be well trained. Not even in just what they've already been teaching, but then additionally, things got shifted around in the new framework, and all of a sudden they had new content sort of landing in their laps. And so we really wanted to not only help elementary educators do good work, but to make it in a way that they could really just sort of come to our site and find things that would be almost immediately usable and that would in some ways be self-explanatory and accessible. And so that's really our charge. And we are incredibly charged ourselves by this. Lori and I, if we could, would probably spend every waking moment of our day working on History's Mysteries. But unfortunately, we both have full-time jobs teaching in other ways. So we're doing our best to sort of keep going. So what I would like to do just really quickly is tell you how these fit into the new framework, the 2018 framework. And we would argue, and we do argue, and we support on our site that it really aligns well with the new framework, sort of three pillars of content standards, practice standards, and literacy standards. And so I always like to, when I first start talking to educators about this inquiry work, just remind them or even just suggest to them, if you haven't had a chance to spend much time in the 2018 frameworks, one of the things that I admire and am in awe about elementary teachers is you're juggling all of these frameworks and you're teaching all of these subjects and you're doing your best to do this amazing job. So if you've never looked at this 2018 framework, there is no shame in that, because the reality is you're juggling so many things. But the new framework has three pillars of standards. And the first one is the one I think you're probably most familiar with in terms of the social studies, which are the content standards. So this is sort of the list of topics that you're responsible for as a fifth grade teacher in social studies or a second grade teacher. And so, for example, immigration has now become a second grade topic, and it wasn't a second grade topic before. So those are the list of kind of topics, and they're organized in the new framework by topic. And so our lessons and our mysteries, our History's Mysteries, align with the new framework. And then another one that hopefully people are familiar with if you're teaching K-5 are the literacy standards. So in the new 2018 framework, the literacy standards are the same K-5 as they are for ELA. And so the idea is that you're sort of integrating and working interdisciplinary to teach social studies and ELA at the same time. And then the last and sort of the newest part of the framework are the standards for history, social science, and practice. So these are the disciplinary standards for teaching of history and social studies K-12. And the idea behind adding these to the new framework was that like science, like math, like ELA, like, the arts, there are disciplinary practices that historians and social scientists engage in. And what we really want to be thinking is, how are we training our young people K-12 to become historians, right? To practice the discipline of history. And so in addition, in a moment, I'll explain kind of the focus on what those are. But I think one of our main goals of this curriculum is really to treat young people like historians. And so what we've done is we've tried to bring in what we think is the mystery of history to our lessons. We pose a question, we ask students to help us investigate and be historians in the process, and help us solve mysteries in every single one of our lessons. And so it's a way to pull kids in and actually ask for them to practice and put on the hat of historian. So the last thing I want to say about the framework is, when we actually look at those practice standards, if you haven't had a chance to dig into the 2018 framework, they appear exactly the same K-12 in the framework. So if I look at the kindergarten framework and I look at the 12th grade framework, or the 9 to 12 framework, I'm going to see these same 7 skills listed as the practice standards for the social studies. And so the goal is they're starting in K, and this is something that is spiraling all the way up to 12th grade. And so students are getting the opportunity at every level to investigate and practice these skills. And so the way I like to think about them is 1 and 7 are kind of like a sandwich to the others. So 1 and 7 are really your civic-minded, civic practices, civics in action. And 2 through 6 really focus on inquiry. And so K-12 students should be working with questions on a regular basis. They should be working with sources, whatever those are. In kindergarten, if it's photographs, right? But they're working with sources, primary and secondary, to actually investigate questions and draw conclusions. And every single one of our mysteries asks students to do that, right? We give them a question, we give them sources to work with, they have to investigate and draw conclusions. And so that is kind of our connection. And then each, obviously, of our mysteries is embedded in those content standards and is having students engage in literacy. So that is our kind of main connection. We always want to remind teachers and students and educators that inquiry is not about finding the right answer, right? It's about the process, and it's also about drawing reasoned and evidenced conclusions. And so that's also exciting, is that students can often come up with different explanations. So just to show you, if you didn't have a chance to explore our website before you came to our meeting today, which is completely fine, I am going to go ahead and go to the website very quickly. And I just want to show you a couple of things about it before Lori is actually going to introduce you to one of our mysteries. So this is our website, and Allison earlier put it in the chat window. And this is completely free. It is, there's no hooks to that. It's free curriculum. It's accessible to everybody, and it's all Google based, which means you can make a copy of anything and be able to use it in your own classroom by adding in slides and shifting things around for your own classroom use, right? So that's something that you can do. And we did all of that intentionally. And so I'll show you a couple of things. When you come to our homepage, if you haven't had a chance, you could watch the introductory video, which tells you a little bit about it. And then we have our main page organized in that we have a series of, and Lori is going to introduce this to you in a second, of introduction to inquiry mysteries. So we've done some grade band introductions that just help educators introduce their students to inquiry. They could be done at any time in any topic that you're teaching. They involve having students look at objects, look at photographs, look at kind of random and obsolete laws, and kind of go through this process of what does it mean to look at something and try to figure it out. And so we felt like, because inquiry was relatively new, particularly in the social studies, right? Elementary educators are probably doing lots of inquiry in science, but maybe not as much in social studies, that we needed to build in some inquiry introduction. And so Lori will tell you about that in a little bit, but this here, if you click on this, it'll bring you to a page with all of our inquiry mysteries. And then as you scroll down, we have a page for each of our grade levels. So we have a kindergarten page, a grade 1, a grade 2, a grade 3, a grade 4, a grade 5. And each of those pages, and I'll take you to one in a moment briefly, will always have all of our mysteries located on that page. So for example, if I go to the kindergarten mysteries, it will take us to the 3 mysteries that we currently have available, plus the 1 grade band introduction that we have right now. We'll tell you a little bit more about what we have in the works, but more to come pretty soon. And those will come listed sort of underneath. It'll be done by unit. So our next unit is coming soon, and that will be added here as well. And so when you come to each grade level page from here, you can click on one of the mysteries. So if I go to this mystery called "What is the difference between then and now?" This will bring you to the page where you can get everything you need for that particular mystery. So just to give you a little tour of the page, which you can get a little bit more of when you watch the introductory video, at the top, we will always have what we call our narrated slideshow. So we developed this with the idea that a teacher, after watching our narrated slideshow and reviewing our materials, can literally click on this and go from slide to slide. And Lori and I narrated these, and it will give you the directions and actually lead the whole class through the entire inquiry. And so in the days of, we did not plan this for COVID, by the way, we already had these in the making, but thinking now of this idea of wearing a mask in the classroom and trying to talk through it, having narrated slides is quite helpful. So we have 3 different slideshows currently available for each of these. They're all in Google, so you can make a copy of them and sort of mix and match, or you can add your own. But there's a narrated slideshow, a static slideshow, which just has the basics, all the slides with no narration, and then a virtual slideshow where we added some things that might be more friendly to teaching through Zoom. So there's 3 slideshows available. We have handouts for the students. So every lesson has some type of an exit ticket or an activity that students are doing. And we made them in Google, which are pushable through Google Classroom or can be usable in that way, and also as a PDF. So you could use the PDF in a PDF editor. I know you're probably all using different things, but we were trying to make things accessible as possible. We have the curriculum frameworks listed right here on the page. We have additional resources like read aloud books. We have websites and other things that help to give the teachers context. And then the last thing we have at the bottom is the lesson plan right here embedded. So you can scroll down. We kept it short and sweet because the other thing we found when we started investigating what was out there for elementary teachers was like, there's good stuff out there, but if I want to actually read the lesson plan, it's going to take me 3 hours. And then I'm going to have to figure out what to do with it. So we wanted it short, sweet, and to the point. And so they're right here, materials, plan of instruction, objectives, etc., right here on the page. So that's really how our website is organized. The last thing I'll say, and then I'm going to let Lori give you a little taste of it, is you can also navigate the site from the top. So if you were to click on kindergarten, first grade, second grade, etc., it would bring you right to that main page. Or if you've already explored and you know exactly where you're going, like I've already done the second grade first mystery and I know I need to get to the second one, you can also just navigate right to the mystery from the top. So that navigation is just another kind of little tool that you can use for that. So that's kind of the overview of our website. We're going to show you a couple mysteries and then we can cycle back if people have questions. So Lori, I'm going to bring you right back to here. And I'm going to put this in present mode, and then you can let me know if I don't switch the slides fast enough.
All right, well, thank you. So as you noticed at the top of each grade level page is that grade band inquiry. So today we're going to look at the second and third grade inquiry. I want to say that this is perfectly accessible to the fourth and fifth graders as well, probably not so much the K1s. But this is a chance to practice the skills of inquiry before you're layering on content as well. And so if your students are not experienced with inquiry, or just to get in some more practice before you jump into the lessons, we really encourage you to do one of these inquiry lessons, focus on the skill of inquiry, and then decide if you're ready to build in. We've also gotten a lot of feedback that the inquiry lessons, as we design them, we're engaging to students, and teachers are swapping out some of the images we used and doing the same activity over and over again to build those skills with students. So the purpose of the inquiry is to get students thinking, what does a historian do? Because many of them think they just read books and then talk. And we want them to know that historians are active. And so the question that we lead this inquiry with is, what are these students learning about? And the process of doing that, we asked the students first to create their own graphic organizer. This was, well, and we remind them, of course, that historians are looking there. But post-COVID, many teachers, of course, didn't have access to printers and distributing materials to students in the same way. So this is an example of one of the revisions we made in a virtual, which was, take a piece of paper. And as you go on to the next page, it's just literally having students fold it. Make your own graphic organizer. This is what it'll look like when you're done. And, the next slide shows them, so that they can still do the same activity, but with whatever happens to be at hand. And then what we're asking students to do in this particular one is a close reading of a visual image. And in this case, they're going to be writing about what they observe in the same quadrant that they're observing. So I'm going to ask you to play along right now. We're not going to be able to go through the entire inquiry in real time because with adults would be here all day. But just for right now, when we look at the next quadrant picture, I'm going to ask you right in the chat to list what you notice. So Kelly, bring up the next image, please. Look closely at this picture and write down everything you see. What do you notice about the setting? What do you notice about the objects? What do you see in the foreground and the background? Put it right in the chat.
Okay, so I see chalkboard, beaver, bear on the blackboard, beaver drawn on the chalkboard, framed photo of cows, question mark, chalkboard, classroom students, multiple teachers, female teacher, windows, pictures of animals, heating vent, teacher in white shirt, question mark? Right? Chalkboard.
Nice. And so we, with students, I would give them a lot of questions about asking them to look at the people involved, their facial expressions, any clues to what their role might be, but really focusing on making observations. When students make inferences, identifying them as inferences and bringing them right back to the observation. What did you observe that made you say that? And we would continue in this manner. I mean, I could do this all day, one by one, taking students through each quadrant of this image. One of the nice things about this is obviously it's very self-differentiating. Students can draw what they notice, or they could write it. Obviously, it's not a spelling test. So, as long as the student can understand what they wrote, that's all that matters. And we would move in this slow, methodical way through the entire image, quadrant by quadrant. So finally, you get to the end, and it's really important to give students one last chance to sort of look at the entire image and see what they notice now. And then also remind them to list any questions they have, because that's the other part of being a historian that we really want to get at in terms of working on inquiry with students, is that a good day in inquiry, we might end, and often do, with more questions than the one we started with. So after students have done all of this, we bring it to a time of, typically it would be a turn and talk. On Zoom, it could be a let's all talk. It could be a type and talk. But we want students to compare their observations with a partner, because what you'll notice is different students notice different things. And we want students to compare their questions and talk about this. And once they have a chance to do that, we want them to come in, start making some inferences. We want them to infer what they think is happening, or make a claim to what they think is happening in this picture, and then support that claim with evidence. And this is really the skill we're working on over and over and over again. Again, asking students about additional questions, which we're recording as a class. And then one sort of summation activity in this moment to get an idea of what students were thinking is to ask them to give that picture a title. And what would it be? So again, you go back to the whole picture. Students are pointing out their most important detail. They are sharing their titles with their classmates and why they chose them, and pointing to any evidence that led them to make the inferences they did. And then in this case, we move from there to having them stake a claim. Whoops, you're going to hear me, I think. Sorry, Kelly. Well, I think I'm not going to waste the time. You want to try it one more time? Okay. Give you a taste of this.
Okay. Given what you know now, make a guess. We'll be coming back and thinking about our guess again later. But right now, given what you know, what do you think these students are learning about? What clues help you make your guess.
And of course, here the important thing is trying to keep them flexible in their thinking and reminding them that the work of a historian has to be flexible. We may think we know what it is, but as soon as we get a little more information, it might change. So after the students make their initial guess, we go back and do a deep dive. And so I start with this image that was on one of the boards, and you're going to hear how I talk about it with students. We think of these narrated slides sometimes as almost just PD for the kinds of conversations you might have with students. Thanks, Kelly.
Let's start with clue 1. At first, I thought this was a flower, but there aren't any other clues that make me think they're studying flowers. I'm going to have to keep thinking about this one and look in the other parts of the picture to see if there's anything that will help me understand.
So we really want to be modeling, just like you do as elementary teachers all day long as you teach ELA, model that thinking, help them stretch their thinking about clues and how clues can support the claims they make. So at this point, I actually take the students through small parts of the image, parts that I think are going to support their understanding, but they might not pick up on their own. And if you look at clue number 2 and clue number 3, sorry, Kelly, you didn't need to go back, you'll notice they're both in cursive, and let them sit with that for a minute and see what they can pull out. We go to clue number 4 and we get a nice close-up of this little person with their bunny on the desk. And then we go through a think aloud and I make things a little more explicit. We examine the clues together. We go back to that picture 1 and ask them what they think it shows. There's a handout that goes with this if they want to use it. If not, these can just be turn and talks or small groups. You know, does this help you figure out what they're studying? We go to this image. And then I get rid of all that cursive writing and let them look at this list and see how that helps inform their thinking. We then eventually get to clue 3, which is this board that has wonderful drawings and as well as this poem, which you might not have recognized. But as you zoom in on it and do a little research, we find out that it's actually a Ralph Waldo Emerson poem. It's the Mountain and the Squirrel, and it gives kids a chance to look at some poetry of the time and start to make a connection of why that would be on the board with the images of these animals across from the other board with the list of the rodent family. Then we come back to this, which I think is obviously the clearest image and the one students will most readily identify with. But now that they have heard a think aloud about the other clues, so begin to connect this one. And finally, we go back and we have them again go back to their page and say, now I think this because. And for some students, they'll change their thinking. Other students got it right away, but it's learning to defend your claim to others who might have a different claim. And I think as teachers here, we have to accept a wide range of answers provided the evidence supports the answer that the student gave. And for me, the last important thing to share with them was this.
Well, historians, one thing I do have to say is that all mysteries may not be solved right away, and that's okay. I keep going back to clue number 1 and trying to figure it out. Now that I know they're studying rodents, I thought about what I know about rodents. I know rodents live in burrows, so I looked at it and tried to imagine that it was trying to illustrate burrows, but it doesn't look that way. Then I thought maybe it's something that rodents eat. That's a good idea, but there's nothing that can prove that to me in the picture. Maybe someday I'll find more pictures of this classroom, or maybe some documents talking about what they were studying. But in the meantime, I'm just going to have to sit with my questions. Historians always have more questions.
So bringing inquiry right back to the beginning, which is we have more questions, and we could choose to investigate them if we want to, and depending on what the actual inquiry you do in your classroom is, you may. But helping students understand that not everything from the past is knowable with the given information is an important concept to lay out to even young historians. So that's a little bit of what our inquiries look like. So here's some evidence of student work that I thought I'd share. What I like about this sample and why I wanted to share it today was you see this diversity of ways students respond. There's pictures, there's some writing. Here's a student that did it on the handout. Here's a student who did it with folded paper. If you can see, there's a hypothesis. The student is guessing that they're all girls. And it was interesting to listen in on some of the reasoning there. Kelly, next slide. Oops, it's you. I forgot. We didn't have time for more student work.
It's here. It's here. There's more student work.
Oh. And again, here, this is getting students to look at specific clues more closely in their pair share also, looking at what their claim is and why they say what they say.
Okay, so I think this is sort of our transition from, we're hoping that all educators, when they do this, will use our introduction to inquiry lessons with their students at some point. And then they're obviously going to want to get into the topics, the grade level topics that our lessons actually address. And so I'm going to show you two things. I'm going to show you kind of some examples through one of our grade 3 units. And then we're actually going to talk a little bit about what's coming next that we're very excited about. But I just have to say, like, there were rabbits on those desks. I can't go through that without being like, those were live rabbits that the students had on their desks. And what, I don't know what I was missing in my elementary school, but we never had live rabbits. That's exciting.
Go back to elementary, Kelly.
So anyway, so as educators sort of transition from the introduction to inquiry, which you can do at any time and you can revisit, and as you can see, Lori mentioned, like you could replace another image at another time and do the same exact thing all over again to get your kids working on those skills. But if we move on to the History's Mystery units, each of the units has a big question, and then each of the mysteries in each unit has its own little investigative question that students are working on. So if you look at our current grade 3 unit, the question is, why do people celebrate on the 4th of July? And so our mysteries, our 3 mysteries are, why do people celebrate? And this one really focuses on students looking at how and why people celebrate and actually being able to back it up with evidence. But then our second and third mystery, which I want to just look at a couple of features of right now. The second one is, why did Americans declare independence on July 4th, 1776? And that really focuses, and that's sort of the meat of the content for this unit, focuses on the Declaration of Independence and what is it about and where is it coming from and what's the history that is making the founding generation sort of create this document. And then our third lesson, our third mystery, is, why would someone refuse to celebrate the 4th of July? And this lesson focuses on Frederick Douglass's speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," and really brings in this level of criticality that is very important to us in our lessons and our mysteries, is to getting students to think critically about history and not just to be absorbing it, right? To be thinking about things from multiple angles and making sure we're creating culturally responsive practice in the classroom. So I'm going to start off by just looking at a couple of features of the second lesson, just to give you an idea of what you might find. So if I were to click on it, I would get my main page over here. And one of the things that we try really hard to do in each of our lessons is have students first identify what kind of prior knowledge they have and how they might connect these issues to their own identity. And we often do that by having students brainstorm before they dig into the content. So we're about to look, and the students are about to look at the Declaration of Independence for both its core beliefs about government, but also for the unjust actions that the framers identified that Britain was sort of really Parliament and the King were doing towards the colonists themselves. And so we start off with these little brainstorms about what is one thing you believe makes our classroom community a good place? So having students think about what might make a good community or a good government. And then we also know when rules are unjust. What is an example of a rule that would be unjust for our classroom? And Lori and I have had the chance to visit some classrooms doing Histories Mysteries, but we've also had a chance to get a lot of feedback from teachers and have gotten students really could identify with both of these questions and think about them in their own classroom. So then what we do to actually look at the parts of the Declaration of Independence, we designed a sort for students that basically takes the document and sorts it into two things. So it asks them to sort the good ideas. So what did the framers put in the Declaration of Independence that they thought would make good government? But then there's also that list of particulars, right? The list of things that the complaints that were made addressed to the king, not all about the king, but definitely addressed to the king. And so students, before they dig into the language of the Declaration, are actually going to do a sort to help them sort out the ideas. So this started as a, get the paper, cut it out, do a kinesthetic activity where you're sorting things. And then COVID happened. And this was right when we were rolling out our curriculum and doing our pilot. And so Lori and I had to sort of think about how else could we do this in our classrooms if students weren't able to have something to cut out and sort. And so here's a couple of ways. Normally, if they were doing the cut and sort, which they can still do, you would have them make two piles. And we kind of describe the two piles, and actually there's some sentence frames for students that help them figure out which pile they might go in. We also, in the spring, created in our virtual slideshow, we created a slide that has each card. And so that way, if we were on Zoom with our students, or you're in Google Meet and you're doing it slide by slide, we could do this together. So I can put the card up and I can say, okay, colonists are taxed without permission. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? Where does it fit, right? And so we come to the conclusion that this is an unjust action. And we provide sentence frames for students if they need them. And then there's this new thing, now that we're becoming a little more adept with Google Classroom and all these other things that we're using with our students. So this is an actual sort. And if I were to just escape here for a moment out of my full screen, you could easily send this to students, make a copy of this one slide, and you can see now I can drag everything around. And for those of you who want to do sorts in Google Slides, if you simply just make this the background, this can't move. So this is here permanently. And only thing that students can drag are these lovely little cards. So you could have students do this together. You could do it as a whole class, or you could simply make a copy of this one slide, pop it out through Google Classroom, and students could do the sort on their own, and then you could share and compare. And so this is just, we wanted to show you both the content, but also some of the ways that this is really quite adaptable for whatever environment you're currently teaching in, which seems to change from day to day. I think I'm certainly feeling that way. So I know you all are as well. So those are some things. And as you see, this allows students to really engage with both the preamble, but also the list of particulars that were part of the Declaration of Independence. Those are the two key parts that we really need to investigate with our third graders, but it can be hard to do it if you jump right to the text. So by the time they're done with this, they have, here are 4 key ideas in the preamble, and then we bring them back to the text and they actually find those in the preamble. So they go in and they actually find, where is it that says the government should help people? And they find that. And so this is an activity where they're really sort of digging into a primary source with supports and scaffolding. Another way that one of our teachers did this is actually from Rachel Breton, who's a 4th grade teacher in East Hampton. And she did it a very simple way. This was before we had the drag option. And so she literally just put these cutouts up and had students, and they numbered them together. And she did it on, with her document camera, and she just numbered them and they figured it out together. So one of the points Lori and I want to emphasize, and I say this, I've been training lots of teachers in this moment in my own district, is that when you find a way that works, that's the good way. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be a way where students are learning. And so that is the nice part about the adaptability of this, is you can kind of take it in whatever way you can make it work for you. And so just sort of carrying on and showing you our lessons, our mysteries, what they do is they build on each other. So the second mystery in grade 3 sets the foundation for what the framers believed were aspects of good government. So when we go to investigate the Frederick Douglass speech and think about, okay, we've figured out why people celebrate the 4th of July and we know what the history is of behind it, but why would people not want to celebrate the 4th of July? We can bring in that framework from the second lesson and apply it in the third. And
Lisa,
so,
if you go back to presenting on your screen, I'm not sure we're keeping up with your slides.
oh, are you not seeing my slides?
No, we saw it in share your screen, but in non-present mode.
Okay, so coming back to this, just sort of this last piece about the primary documents and primary sources, what we have done for the grade 3 final mystery is we have taken the What to the American Slave is Your 4th of July speech that Frederick Douglass gave. Actually, I need to switch that, on the 5th of July, and that was intentional. We have modified the speech. And so that is something that we do, and we openly do it with modification. We always label our primary sources modified, but we really feel like that's how you can make primary sources available to younger students, is by doing some modifications. And so we do our best effort to keep true to the nature of the actual the source itself, but we often modify the language and we test it out with students and modify a bit to help them to be able to explore it. And so we have in this third lesson, after they learn a little bit about Frederick Douglass, we have them actually explore the speech and read the speech together. And then what they do is they look for specific words that describe how enslaved people feel about the 4th of July. So what is his argument? What is Frederick Douglass arguing about why people wouldn't want to celebrate the 4th of July? And so what was really cool is we've had the opportunity to see some of the samples. And this is an example from Rachel Breton's classroom, that she was the one I just showed you her cards that she matched. And you can see they went through and they labeled and highlighted different things that really stood out to them about the message of Frederick Douglass's speech. And I just have to say, the first time I saw this, I was so elated as a high school teacher, because if you, the your, right? The fact that they have picked out the rhetorical repetition of your and what that means in Frederick Douglass's speech. I'm like, these are fourth graders doing rhetorical analysis about the power of Frederick Douglass's speech, and the fact that he just keeps saying, this is yours, it's yours, it's yours. And he's speaking to an abolitionist audience, right? The majority white audience, where he's pushing back on them and saying, you know what, this is yours, this isn't mine. Right? And he keeps seeing your. And it's just this moment where I was like, this is it. This is what we want to be doing with young people. It's so exciting to see. And because it's modified, students can access it and they can do it. And it's very, very fun to watch. And they have the opportunity then to go back to the 4 ideas about good government that we talked about in lesson 2. And they can look in here and say, okay, do I see anything where he disagrees, for example, that all people are being created equal? And if I wasn't in presentation mode, I could drag these around a little bit and show you that you could highlight something and the student could match the idea and say, this is the opposite of what's happening. So, the unjust actions that the government is taking, crimes that would disgrace a nation. Well, that certainly doesn't sound like people are being treated equally, or that the government is taking care of people. And so this opportunity to really see the lessons kind of intertwine with each other. And both the second and the third lesson end with what we call a patriot rant. And so the second one says they have to pick out what was the best argument in the list of particulars that said, that list of complaints that were there, what was the strongest argument. And then in this, right, Frederick Douglass is also a patriot, right? And we talk about, there's vocabulary embedded into each of these lessons. We didn't really talk about that, but there's vocabulary that's done in each. And we talk about kind of what does it mean to be a patriot. And then they get to do a patriot rant from Frederick Douglass's perspective and to say, what was his strongest argument for why enslaved people wouldn't want to celebrate the 4th of July. So that just gives you a little sample into two of our lessons in one of our units that really show how students are dealing with primary sources, but also doing age-appropriate activities that are going to get them to engage with the actual material.
Kelly, I wanted to add one thing about Rachel Breton's work in the classroom. And I just want to say that when you talk about the power of that, I also want to say that she works to have her students have a lot of voice and choice in her classroom. And I happened to get to watch her teach. Kelly and I were fortunate enough to be able to Zoom in with them. And what was neat, and I just want to share, is the power of, she actually shared her screen with them and let them highlight, and take turns. And the power of that and the agency it gave students was really wonderful to watch. And so if you have a class that's ready for that, I think it's really wonderful. And I wanted to share that because I think it was one of the strengths of watching her work.
Yeah, it really was. But we've been so fortunate. And if any of you out there are our History Mysteries pilot folks, we are so appreciative of that. We've actually now trained over 200 teachers and we worked with a really strong pilot in the spring that was people who were so incredibly flexible, right? We were ready to roll it out, and then all of a sudden everyone was virtual. And people I'm so incredibly impressed. And as a high school teacher, I learned so much every single day from elementary teachers and the pedagogy and the work that they do. This is just one little small piece that I can help to give back. I'm still on the other side of that. So it's exciting.
Yes.
Okay. So what's next?
We're so excited. What's next is more units. Coming soonest to the website where you can currently go. In kindergarten, the big question will be, how do we decide what to celebrate in our cultures? Grade 1, we actually already have our second unit up, and that is what do good leaders always make good decisions. Grade 2, we will be working next on what maps tell us about their makers, and we're actually excited with what that is doing. The 3rd grade up and coming next unit will be who were the people of the American Revolution. Grade 4, and this is fun, is how did corn impact North and South American cultures? And the other one that is getting very close to being ready to go, we're excited about kindergarten and 5, they're our next 2, is how did enslaved people experience the Atlantic world? In addition to that, we are developing online professional development modules for educators. I am very close on one, which will be choosing and using primary source documents with kindergartners through grade 2 students. You can well guess that grades 3 through 5 are next. And we're also working on some more introductory mysteries for each band. So we are working as much as we can around our day jobs. So, but it's because we really love working with teachers. We love that this is free and accessible to you, and we love your feedback. We love your suggestions when you get great ideas and you email them to us so we can add it to the teacher resource list. We love your questions, so please keep sending those too.
The other thing that many of you have probably been introduced to is the wonderful world of Bitmojis. And so we now actually have a Histories Mysteries team of young people that are that we have up here at the top that'll be helping us with our mysteries. And so we have new characters that we're adding every day to our group of Bitmoji friends that are going to help with the Histories Mysteries for each grade level. So all of this new tech stuff, we're learning new stuff all the time. Otherwise, it's sort of Lori and I are a couple of teachers making curriculum in our pajamas. But we,
the basement. during
are very
COVID.
excited about it. So just as a little carrot into kind of what's coming next, we are working on this unit on how enslaved people experienced the Atlantic world. And so just to give you a window into this, there are 4 lessons, and we actually start with freedom and end with freedom, and that was very important to us. So we've brought in, one of the things that we've been trying to do are to bring in ideas and scholarship that elementary teachers may not have regular exposure to, and also to bring in sources that they may not necessarily have exposure to. And so what we've chosen to do with this unit is to take a narrative, an enslaved narrative. Kazula Cudjoe Lewis, if any of you have read the book Barracoon, it was released very recently, but was actually taken by Zora Neale Hurston back in the 1920s, is a narrative of actually the last slave ship that was brought from West Africa to America, actually illegally, in 1859. But what it does is the narrative of Kazula Cudjoe Lewis is a really nice picture for us, because it gives us the idea of him as a child in West Africa, and growing up in West Africa. And we start with that, and then we go through sort of the capture as a prisoner of war, and then his experience in the Middle Passage, his experience as an enslaved person in the Americas, and then freedom, right? He helps to found this community in Alabama called Africa Town. He, when he dies, he owns his own house. He's helped to found this town. He's an amazing story. And I think one of the things that we're really trying to emphasize for all teachers is that when you're teaching about sort of the horrible aspects of the past of slavery, you have to somehow join those with agency and joy, and sort of the celebration of the strength and amazing stories of people. And so we've tried to bring in these stories. I also have the narrative of Mary Prince that we brought in, who was born in Bermuda and also is just this sort of amazing woman, but her story is different. And so it's the whole idea of this unit is, how do we learn from the voices of people? How do historians learn from the voices of people? And so this is one little small window into an exit ticket for one of the lessons, where we have students talk back to the text. And so we take a text excerpt, which isn't a bad excerpt, but then we talk about how could reading a narrative of Mary Prince and actually looking at a photograph of some of the type of work that was being done actually help us become better historians and understand the past better. And so it really gets students active, and again, doing that criticality piece that's so important. And I really try to channel, those of you who are familiar with Goldie Muhammad, like I really try to channel kind of her thinking, her 4-layered thinking about these lessons. So that's kind of a sneak peek into our passion that's coming next. And we know we only have about 5 minutes, but we would love to answer any questions that anybody has, and also to welcome you to email us and contact us with any questions at all, or just ideas. We're very excited, so if you can't tell.
So you can pop them in the chat. You can just unmute yourself, but please feel free.
Do you have a list of other resources? So if students want to keep reading more, embedded? I browsed, but I didn't really dig.
There are books, there's some websites typically, there's some books for educators. If you want to do your own background research on these topics, we develop them, I'll be honest, as we go. We add to them as we hear of new books. But yes, there are places for people to go if they want to learn more.
And we also always ask teachers, like as they're using these materials, if they come across like supplementary materials they use, to send them to us, and then we can add them to the teacher resource page. And then a lot of those are also things that students could be reading, especially the older students. Other questions or comments or needs?
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's like, I'm so excited. This is really impressive. Having taught from second all the way up now in middle school 5th, and I teach ELA and social studies. I've used Mystery Doug. I've used Engage New York. I feel like this is a combination of both. I think it's great. And I think primary sources is really challenging for teachers to acquire. And putting it at a level for students with the inquiry it's just brilliant. I'm so appreciative and thankful that you are making this something for us to use. So thank you.
Enjoy. That's where the joy comes from.
Yeah, and know that we're working as quick as we can, and we want to be producing more. Like it really is in our heart to do so. So as soon as we have stuff ready, we're going to get it out to folks. And now that you're on our list, what we're going to do is be sending stuff out before we make it public. So you'll have the opportunity to see, say, the K and the 5 lessons before we actually put it out public on the site, just in case people want to give us some feedback. So that's a good news about that. And if other people, other people that might want to be on that list, they can access us through our contacts page on our webpage.
Oh, and I'm glad Google works for you. I'm reading in the chat. It made sense, and it allows people to differentiate, because any one lesson might be 3 lessons in your classroom, especially if you're working virtually. That's something we heard from a lot of teachers in the pilot, was that they were taking it over, 3 lessons sometimes.
That is definitely something that we want to tell people, that you shouldn't equate one mystery with one lesson, like one day. That it's the one mystery might take 2-3 days. And particularly if you've got social studies spread out over, twice a week or something, it might take you a full week or a week and a half to do it.
Thank you. I know if people have to go, we understand. We appreciate you being here. Do feel free to reach out if there's any way we can help you in your classrooms. Be good to yourself during this time, and
yeah, for sure.
Take care. We will hang out for any questions though until they kick us off.
So I just joined the link, the Zoom. I never really registered. Is there something I should do besides just joining the Zoom?
So Brenda, if you want to, you could just our emails were in the chat. If you drop me a quick email with your email, then I'll put you on the list, so you don't have to, or you could privately chat me your email address right now. That's also a possibility.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that.
Thanand you.
If there's anybody else who just joined but wasn't on the original list, feel free to just drop me your email in the, and there is a survey for this, so feel free, please fill that out.
Help them. They worked so hard to pull this off. So many hours by amazing volunteers.
Yes. Shout out to Casey and Gorman, who are here, and the many other people that have helped us.
Oh, after you submit your feedback, you get your certificate. Any other questions?
Please speak up if you have one. I can see we still have 22 participants, so people are hanging in here thinking they want to hear. If you've got a question, they're curious of the answer, so no question is too small.
And I'm grabbing folks' email that have sent me here into the chat, so
thank you.
I will add you to our list.
Thank you for your enthusiasm. It's contagious.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for your...
It's real, I promise.
It is.
We're excited.
We can tell.
Keeps us going.
You were always enthusiastic though, Lori. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. E. Hogan, what is your first name? I'm sorry. Great. Thank you, Erin.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, I just have a quick question. So you have this recorded. Would you suggest, are you going to be presenting again? Would you suggest, like, if we wanted to share this with other staff, that we share the recording? Like, I want to honor whatever you feel is the right thing to do. So yeah.
It's up to you. What district are you with, Brenda? I didn't catch.
Mendon Upton.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a whole school thing, you should reach out to Kelly and I, but certainly feel free to share thoughts, Kelly.
Yeah, I think what we're going to be trying to do, I think moving forward, Brenda, is like bi-monthly, like an hour-and-a-half session or so that people can join. So I think definitely like you could introduce people to the site. You could share this with them. If that's, I don't know what the NERC situation is, but if they don't have a problem, then I mean, we don't really have control over that. But also maybe as you get the emails, maybe you recommend that they come and join a session with us live.
Yes,
And
perfect.
then they could have a chance to ask us questions. And by then we'll have new stuff out by November 12th.
November 12th.
November 12th is our hard.
No, November 12th, we meet back with our original fabulous pilot crew, and our gift to them is our next material will be ready. So,
Well, it fits perfect with the curriculum I'm right in the middle of, with the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and then moving into equality. So, and I know one of the biggest, the biggest, I guess, standard units that we do that I want to make sure we honor is the civil rights and the slavery. So the fact that you have something for that is powerful. It's great. So.
No, we would love to have teachers join us, and those will be going up soon. And we try to keep that information on the front page of the website.
Okay.
Yep, that's great. And one thing we didn't, because this is only an hour, we didn't have a chance to like give some of our tips, but we always say to 5th grade teachers, like, don't be afraid to look back at the 3rd grade.
Oh, I already did. Yeah.
Like, you can up dress and down dress some of the lessons. And
so true, because even if they've already used it in 3rd grade, I feel as though they might not have like been able to take that in 3rd grade. So where it's new, I know they haven't used it yet, but there's a lot of things I already saw in 3rd grade that I was like, oh yeah.
Kelly and I use some of these very lessons she uses them with her high school students. I've used some of them with my college students. So.
I mean, inquiry is inquiry. It will bring you wherever your audience, right?
Absolutely. Well said.
Oh, this is brilliant. I can't believe this is like, I saw it and I mean, it's a long day and I was like, oh, do I really want to? And then I'm like, it sounds interesting. I'm so glad I came.
We are too.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. One more cheerleader on board is good. Share the word, spread the website because it's free. Like send it out on social media, get it out to people because it's free.
Are you on Twitter? Do you have a Twitter? Like
no.
No.
That's that whole 2 teachers in their pajamas.
Because we're too busy writing curriculum in our basement.
Brenda, look for Emerging America, because Emerging America has a Twitter, and we'll re-amplify what you do, and also hashtag SS Chat, the social studies chat.
Okay.
And I want to say you have been such a fabulous participant in the chat, and that really makes the session go. And so I want to appreciate you as a member of the group in this. You really help lubricate this group and make it feel like a class. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. No, it's what we have to do, right? Because so many of us just will sit back like our students and I can't hide my excitement. Are you kidding me? All right. So you said SS Chat, and what was the other one?
Emerging
America. And I think, will you send out the slides? Do we send out the presentation to people afterwards, Kelly and Lori, for a social?
I can do that.
We can.
Yeah, I can do that. I don't know. Casey, do you know whether how the videos are actually working?
I think Gorman's uploading them onto the website, if I'm
okay.
Awesome.
Correct.
Maybe what I'll do.
Or he was keeping him as a running Google spreadsheet, and then you could access them and then go through them.
Okay.
I can't remember which one.
I'll figure it out. Don't worry.
Anyway, we don't need to do enough work for anyone, but
maybe I'll wait till that comes up and then I'll send the slideshow out with the video so that people can.
Terrific.
All right. Well, you're gonna get feedback because I have a big audience on Twitter, so get ready.
All right. Thank you, Brenda.
Right. Bring it on, Brenda.
Have a great week. You started my week off fabulous.
Thanks, folks.
Take care. Hey, Casey, so good to see you.
Kelly, great to see you as well. Hopefully we'll see everybody again in a way better world.
All right.
I know. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.